everybody. Fresh, pure, holy peace. Oh, peace in you, peace in me, peace for everybody. Fresh, pure, holy peace.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. This is the fifth segment in the series under the title Peace and Justice for All. In the previous segment, the fourth segment, we ended by raising a question. Basically, that what we read in the Quran about peace and justice sound very nice, very sensible, very interesting. But I raised the question that some raise. So how could all of this beautiful teaching about justice and peace, how do these teachings square with such concept like a holy war? One, I'll tell you something that happened with me. I was invited to give a talk on jihad in Boston, in the United States. And as I entered, with so many people sitting there, a lot of people of other faith communities, and the first thing I said, I hereby declare jihad. I invite all Muslims here and elsewhere to engage in jihad. And I call upon all people of all faith communities to join also in jihad. And I bet that each and every one of you here, irrespective of your religious background or no religion, every one of you without knowing it, knowing or unknowingly, is engaged and has been engaged for years in jihad. And I see the faces of people blinking and they look very curious about that declaration. Who is that person? And I tell them, relax. This place is not going to blow up. But that actually was an introduction, more or less to shock people and challenge the common concept that they have in mind that holy war is jihad and jihad is holy war, a fatal mistake. To challenge the common perception propagated by international media in particular, and the statements of some politicians using terms that are offensive and erroneous before they are offensive, like this is a jihadist, and they refer to someone committing something that's not sanctioned by Islam, the term jihadist. Jihadism, as if Islam accepts any isms as an ideology in that sense. People who are using terms like violent jihad. Not only this, people mixing this even with concepts like fascism, like even terrorism, the term that has been coined recently and been used in a variety of meanings. The only logical thing to answer from an honest, objective perspective is to raise the following questions. And the first one, is there such thing really in the Quran as holy war? And the answer is very simple. If you find a single place in the entire Quran from A to Z that ever used the Arabic equivalent of holy war, which is harb muqaddasa, if you find it anywhere, I have been always making that challenge in several countries, that I'll pay you $1 million for each incident you find the term holy war in the Quran. You know, of course, professors don't make millions, but I know what I'm talking about. You get the concordance of the Quran in Arabic and try to look under harb muqaddasa. You know how many times it occurs in the Quran? 0. None whatsoever. How many people are aware of this? Secondly, when we speak about a term like holy war, I believe that this is a contradiction of terms. What is holy about the loss of life, property, injury, destruction, and distress? It's an oxymoron. Nowhere in the Quran does it glamorize war in itself. In fact, in the Quran, in the second surah, in verse 216, 216, it says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. That fighting is allowed to you, sanctioned, i.e., we'll talk, of course, about the conditions like self-defense. Even though you hate it, you feel it abhorrent. But then it says you may hate something in which there is good for you, which means that sometimes the comparison is not between good and evil, but between the lesser of the two harms. When you have to stand up to defend your country, to defend your property, to defend your family, in the face of unprovoked aggression, there may be some good in trying to repel that aggression, because not repelling aggression might result in more and more greater oppression. But in itself, it's described as a hated act. How could a hated act be promoted to the level of being not only acceptable, but holy? The term holy war is an oxymoron. That's one. A third point is that holy war is an English term. Then we have to find out where did it emerge, in what context, and how is it defined in English dictionaries. Holy war that is always attached to Islam and Muslims falsely was never something that emerged during the 14th century's life of Muslims. It was not coined by Muslims, not the Arabic, not the English term, never. We know it emerged in medieval Europe, and actually it was used in a very negative sense. For example, holy war meant for some sending crusade after crusade against the so-called infidel Muslims and saving Jerusalem from this infidel, people who do not believe in God, the false propaganda that was going on. Holy war was used also even later on, unfortunately, contrary to the noble teaching of Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, and all other prophets, into intra-Christian fighting, people fighting those who have the wrong brand or wrong understanding of Christianity. So the historical legacy and emergence of the term and the place where it emerged was not really the Muslim world, was not part of Islamic understanding or paradigms. But then, to confirm that further, you check the English dictionary, and holy war is defined as a war waged on behalf of one religion against the other religion. That's religious war, not that it's religious in a good sense, war that's falsely attributed to religion. War waged on behalf of one religion against the other religion. What does that mean when the term religion appeared twice? It means that the only reason you're fighting others is that they have a different religion from yours. Some might call it false religion, less accurate, theologically wrong, whatever they want to describe it. But because I believe that this is false or not good or not the ideal thing, I have every right to fight. That concept, as a concept, does not exist anywhere in the Quran. Anywhere in the Quran. There is no verse that says fight people because of their religion. If even the description says fight the kuffar or those who rejectors of faith, it's not because of the rejection of faith, but because of their aggression, if we know the background and occasion of revelation of these verses in the Quran. But nowhere in the Quran does it say fight someone to obliterate their religion because you think it is a wrong kind of religion. On the contrary, the Quran is crystal clear. Verse 256 in the second chapter. لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. Let there be no coercion in the matters of faith. Some people translate it compulsion, but I think even the word coercion is more accurate, because compulsion might be the more brutal use of force or threat of killing or killing. But ikrah, actually, the original Arabic term, could mean also simply pressure, twisting arms, not necessarily violence, even twisting arms or pressure, bribery or threats or enticement just to mislead people into accepting something they don't want. That is forbidden as well. If the Quran says this, how come does it allow, if that were true, not was, were true, allow people to fight others, or allow Muslims to fight others because they have another religion? At the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, You know, the Arab people used to worship idols. And one day they tried to make an unworkable compromise with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So again, the background, you cannot tell when you read the Quran without that background. It's mentioned, by the way, in Surah Al-Kafirun, that the surah is 109, but it doesn't give that background. But once you know the background, you can understand the point we're trying to make. So they said, why do we have to be, you know, at each other's throat and so on? Why don't we make a compromise? We are willing to worship your God, mean the one true God, Allah, for some time. But you and your followers also, i.e. Muslims, you worship also our idols some other time. Yeah, so the sort of, you know, this kind of compromise is like, you know, the story of the Prophet Solomon, where the two ladies starting to dispute, each one saying, this is my baby, this is my child. The other one say, it's not, no, it's my child. So Prophet Sulaiman, it was narrated in other sources, that he said, all right, we'll make a compromise between you two ladies, since both of you have equal claim. So let's get a saw or knife and cut the baby into half, and each one of you take half. Well, half a baby is a dead baby. That's not a compromise. Like some people in management say, one of the gurus, Peter Drucker, say that, you know, half a loaf of bread is a functional compromise. If we only have one half, you know, one loaf of bread, you take half, I take half. That's a workable type of compromise. But half a baby is a dead baby. So, in fact, this was the kind of compromise that sounds like half a baby. So the Quran came to answer them, and telling them, "O you who rejected faith," meaning in the one true God, you know, I'm not going to worship what you worship. You're not going to worship what I worship, neither now nor in the future. But then at the end, what does it say? لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينٌ. Unto you, your own religion, unto me, my own religion, even though they are quite different in orientation. Unto you, your religion, unto me, my religion. Not that I have to impose my religion upon you or fight you because you are religious. Take a break now, come back inshallah to continue with this.
Holy peace.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before the break, we made it clear that the concept of holy war never occurs in the Quran, not once, that neither as a definition in English nor as a concept either it has anything to do with Islamic teaching. You're not allowed to fight people on the sole ground that they hold a different belief. They are free to believe what they want, and Allah is the one who's holding everybody accountable in the day of judgment. But now, why is that different from jihad then? Well, holy war is not jihad, jihad is not holy war. Let's make it clear from the very outset. How do we know that? Take the term jihad itself. And the best way to understand it is to go back to the etymology, the linguistic origin. Where does the term jihad come from? We have explained already in a previous segment the system of derivation of words in the Arabic language, that there is a root. For example, like 3 letters, like the word SLM, from which came Islam and Muslim. Likewise, jihad also comes from a root in Arabic without vowel signs that's composed of 3 letters. Jim, Ha, Dal. It sounds in English like J, H, D. That's the same root from which a variety of terms are derived. And no derivative can be understood without understanding the core meaning, the basic meaning of that root. In Arabic, these 3 letters, J, H, D, as they sound in English, actually mean to exert effort, juhd, to exert maximum effort, or to strive for something, like a student striving to get an A, for example, striving for excellence. Now, from that perspective then, how does the term jihad, or what does the term jihad mean? The answer is not just by going in circles, but going straight to the 2 most primary and authoritative sources of Islamic teaching the Quran, the book of Allah, and Hadith, the teaching of his last prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. And see how the term have been used. First, it is used to refer to exertion of maximum effort against evil inclination within ourselves. Hatred, pride, violence, jealousy, you name it. That's a harder jihad. In fact, if you look, for example, in Surah 22, verses 77 and 78, towards the end of the surah, it speaks about making jihad or striving for the sake of Allah in the best possible way, the hardest way. And in fact, if you look at the context, it's not a context of battlefield, as we find in some other surahs in the Quran. It says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ارْكَعُوا وَاسْجُدُوا وَاعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ وَافْعَلُوا الْخَيْرَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. It says, oh believers, bow down or prostrate, bow down and prostrate or go to sajda in your prayers and worship your Lord and do righteous deeds that you may achieve success. And strive, when you translate it in that context, contextual translation, and strive, meaning against evil within yourself for the sake of Allah. So the context here is worship, is doing good deeds, is getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not a very unusual expression in the Arabic language, and even in some hadith, even though there have been argument about the extent of their authenticity. But it's known to be called jihadun nafs, jihadun nafs, because you said jihad means to strive, meaning to strive against evil inclination or sinfulness in the nafs within our own. Perhaps that is the fundamental jihad. That's the basic jihad, because without success in this inner jihad, there could be no other success in other forms of jihad. That's one meaning or usage. Secondly, jihad is used in the Quran also to refer to giving charity to the poor. It comes from the identical root. For example, in chapter 49, Al-Hujurat, in the Quran, it describes giving zakah to the poor as jihad. وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ, describing believers who make jihad or strive with their wealth and their persons. Now, why it's called jihad? Well, because you exert maximum effort against inclination of miserliness or greed or lack of sympathy with those who are in need, in order to pay that or to part with that money that you possess or part of it for the sake of the poor. That's jihad. You're striving. Thirdly, it is mentioned in the Quran, or fourthly, I should say, it is also mentioned in the Quran in the context of promoting the truth, sharing the truth, that speaking the truth without compulsion or pressure on anyone. For example, in Surah 25, in verse 52, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is commanded by Allah to make jihad against those who rejected belief in Allah. With what? Guess. Jihad against those who rejected faith in Allah. With the Quran. With the Quran, that's what it says. It says, فَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ, أي بالقرآن, جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. Don't obey those who reject faith in Allah. And make jihad, meaning struggle, strive against those who reject Allah with the Quran. How do you strive with the Quran if we understand jihad always as something physical or violent? I mean, you want to hit somebody in the head with a hard copy of the Quran? Obviously, this is a very superficial understanding. Making jihad with the Quran, meaning with the truth contained in the Quran. The truth contained. That's jihad. In fact, in Arabic literature, it is not unusual at all to say that X person is making jihad with his pen or jihad with her tongue. That is jihad, striving to articulate, to clarify the truth that you believe in and let people make up decisions for themselves. Sixthly, there is also another form of jihad, which is found in a very important term in Islamic law, ijtihad. Ijtihad actually comes from the same root as jihad, and the three letters, the core letter JHD or Jim Hada, appear in it. Why it's called ijtihad, and what is ijtihad? Ijtihad actually means the exertion, again, the core meaning, the exertion of maximum intellectual effort on the part of a qualified scholar to come up with a contemporary solution to a contemporary problem that is not specifically or explicitly mentioned in the Quran and Hadith, because the Quran and Hadith are meant also to be applicable for all time and place. Just for example, there was nothing like in vitro fertilization at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or blood transfusion, or organ donation, organ transplant. These are all contemporary issues. A qualified scholar then, in order to find a solution for that problem, whether it's permissible in Islam or not, with the depth of knowledge, depth and width of knowledge, exerts maximum intellectual effort to make analogy or other process of legal interpretation to come up with an answer or a religious opinion in that particular case. So it is jihad, exertion of effort as well. In fact, going back to the lecture in Boston, when they were very surprised, I told them, look, when you wake up in the winter, of course, you know, New England also is quite cold, sometimes snow outside. When you have to go to work in the morning and the bed is very soft and warm, especially for people who might be allergic to morning, you know, and you have to get up, you're engaged in jihad, whether you're a Muslim, Christian, Jew, or anyone else for that matter, because you're exerting maximum effort. You're striving to pull yourself out of that warm bed to go in the cold and get to work, especially for those who are used to sleep late in the morning. So I say everybody's involved in jihad. If you're a student and you're trying to strive to get a good paper, you stay all night, you go to the internet and get material, you go to the library, you exert maximum effort in order to achieve what you want. That is also jihad. So that's what I explained to them, that this is the reason I said each and every one of you is making jihad every day, whether you realize it or not, if you take jihad in that broad meaning. Finally, there is another meaning of jihad. Very important one also when the need arises. You can call it combative jihad, meaning jihad in the battlefield. Now, what exactly are the conditions required to engage in that jihad? How do you act or behave in the battlefield if you have to do? And also, what kind of conditions, ethical boundaries that you have to observe while engaging in that form of jihad, and how does that contrast, don't even say differ, contrasts severely with notions like fascism or terrorism. Inshallah, we'll catch up with that. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace in you, peace in me, peace for everybody. Fresh, pure, holy peace. Oh, peace in you, peace in me, peace for everybody. Fresh, pure, holy peace. I feel the peace inside of me, a complete tranquility. I remember Allah, He remembers me. Feel the peace.